There are certain words and phrases that we've used more in recent history than ever before. Some because the word didn't even exist, like skibbity. So, if you have no idea what I just said, it's because you don't live with a teenager. I'm totally not sure what that word means, and if I'm the one that just introduced it into your vocabulary, I apologize. Others, they're words that we've used before, but recently we've used them at a rate unlike ever before. Like they've just become so a part of our daily conversation, especially since 2020. Like words and phrases like new norm, or polarization, or social distancing. Like phrases that we've had, we just never use them as frequently as we have for the past 4 or 5 years. Another one, trust the experts. Like we've all heard trust the experts, right? Now, while expertise is valuable, history shows that trusting the experts can be misleading. Like, did you know up until the 50s, doctors recommended certain brands of cigarettes? And then really up until the 60s, scientists were still promoting eugenics. Nutritionists once said that sugar was harmless and even healthy sources of fat were bad for you. Now, the thing is like even in recent years, our understanding and our guidance, it has evolved. And the point isn't to just reject expertise. God has given us wisdom and knowledge for a reason. But we have to remember that human knowledge is limited and it is fallible. So the question then becomes, what if the experts are wrong? What do we do then? Are we allowed to question the experts? Because it's a very easy thing to say, trust the experts. They have the credentials. They have the degrees. You don't. But if somebody is an expert, that should always invite scrutiny because they should be able to back it up. So what happens, though, when the experts are wrong? We're going to get an example of that in Acts chapter 17 from Paul today. Because this is the situation that he stepped into when he arrived in Athens. Athens was a city that was filled with the smartest people of their day. Like this was a city full of philosophers, thinkers, influencers. And Paul steps in and he confronts them with their wrong thinking. The people that came from Athens, if you know anything about philosophy and history, think of Socrates and Plato. Like these are people who their thoughts and what they developed still has like influence on our culture today. Now I know some of you are here for the first time, so let me tell it to you like this. Imagine you are binge watching a Netflix series, all right? We've been binge watching a Netflix series of Acts, per se, in this church for the past several months. We've been working through Acts. It's a 28-episode series. How many chapters are in Acts? You're jumping in episode 17. So I'm going to try to catch you up real quick with where we are. But in Acts chapter 1, Jesus ascends to heaven. Then in chapter 2, the Spirit falls on the first believers of the church, and we see the birth of the Christian church. Then after that, we see this kind of pattern of God showing favor on the church, and then there being opposition and persecution, and it going back and forth, this blessing, persecution. Then in chapter 7, we see the first Christian martyr in the church's history in Stephen. And then following that, we get the missionary journeys of Paul, who used to be an enemy and a persecutor of the church. He would murder Christians. He would throw them in prison. And then God confronts him. Jesus confronts him and radically changes his life. Then he becomes the greatest missionary that the world has ever seen. And then by the time we get to Acts chapter 7, he's just been thrown out of 2 different cities for preaching Jesus. And he's in Athens right now waiting for his friends to join him. That's Acts 1 through 17 as quickly as I can give it to you. Now, while he's in Athens, he sees this overwhelming culture of idol worship. And instead of doing what I think most people would do, be like, you know what? Not my problem. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to keep it moving. Paul, if you know anything about him, he wasn't like that. Paul sees it, and he's like, you know what? I need to confront this. I need to tell them what they're doing is wrong. So what does he do? He goes straight into the place where deep conversations would happen. He runs straight to the synagogue. And there it says he starts reasoning with them. Then he leaves the synagogue and he goes to the marketplace. Now, when I say marketplace, don't think Paul went to Kroger and he starts preaching in the bread aisle. The marketplace in Greek cities, it was the center of life. It was the hub of culture. It was where people of influence would gather and talk. Think of it like a mix between a town square, a coffee shop, and a courthouse. This is where important conversations would happen. Then, after talking there, Paul, he's invited to speak to the Areopagus. Now, the Areopagus, this was a group of very influential men in the city. Think of them as like the thought police, almost the thought leaders. You would go before them, and they would basically guard morality, guard philosophy, guard thought and ideas that were coming out of Athens, and they would give you credibility to determine if what you're saying was even worth listening to or not. So if you got to speak to the Areopagus, you were basically making an argument for credibility to them. So Paul gets to speak to them, and when he gets in front of them, he gives one of the greatest sermons that we see him give. He speaks right to them. He speaks directly, and he confronts them, but he also points them to the truth. So if you have your Bible, Acts chapter 17, starting in verse 16, is where we're going to pick up. And it says, while Paul was waiting in Athens, he was deeply distressed when he saw that the city was full of idols. So again, by the time Paul arrives in Athens, he's stepping into the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Athens wasn't just another city, it was the center of philosophy and art and politics and religion, a place that shaped Western culture for centuries. Athens wasn't just influential in Greece, but it shaped the ideas of the Roman Empire and all of Western civilization. So think of cities like Boston and Chicago right now, cities with universities that are influential, that have some significant influence on culture. And then you think of Washington, D.C., where government and policy is just coming out, that's shaping an entire nation. And then you think of cities like Silicon Valley and Cambridge, where there is so much just intellectual thought that drives culture and economy. Now take all of that and put it into one, and you have Athens. So you start to get this idea of how much influence Athens has, not just on the ancient world, but still being felt today. So Paul knows this. He knows that he's stepping into one of the most influential cities. He's stepping into the heart of this city, and he knows that if he can reach these people with the gospel, that he's not just going to touch a few, but that he's going to touch the minds of people who are shaping culture and society. And look what he finds in verse 16. It says he was deeply distressed when he saw that the city was full of idols. Now, here's something that we often miss. When we think of idols, we might think of carved images, golden statues, people bowing down and praying to them. We think, we've advanced beyond that. Like we don't worship idols. That's something that some faraway or ancient civilization does. But we like to tell ourselves, like, us? Like, we're advanced beyond that. We've moved past that. We're intellectual. We're civilized. We're an advanced society. We don't worship idols. That's something that unenlightened people do, but not us. We have to remember, though these people are ancient, these are some of the sharpest minds in history. Like even in a place of brilliance and learning, you see that people can still turn their hearts from the Creator to the created. And that's what Paul steps into. And if we're honest, we see the same pattern today. Modern academics, writers, intellectuals, they'll do everything they can to create some sort of caricature of religion, especially Christianity. They'll somehow explain it or say that it's a crutch or it's a comfort blanket for the weak, or it's just a way for people to avoid facing some sort of reality that we actually have no meaning. But it's something that certainly we should have advanced beyond now, right? But what we see is that idolatry is not a matter of IQ or education. Everyone, the highly educated, the intellectual elites, everyone worships something. It just looks different. Comfort, status, success, knowledge itself, money, control. Like idols are everywhere, but they've advanced with the times too and just taken on different names and different disguises. Like some will say hold to the idol of of scientific reason. Like they've elevated that above God. That if I can't feel it, if I can't touch it, if I can't see it, if I can't measure it, if I can't see it physically somehow, then I'm not going to believe it. Others will hold to the idol of human progress. Like there's this temptation to think that we can eventually advance beyond our limitations, that we can solve all of our problems on our own if we just invent more, innovate enough through education, technology, politics. If we can just get smarter, if we can just figure these things out, we'll solve all the problems in the world. Others will say they wear their sort of philosophical or moral sophistication as a badge of honor. Like some people pride themselves on being woke or thinking critically or deconstructing religion as if spotting flaws in faith somehow proves their superiority. But the thing that we see here, Paul sees in Athens, and we need to recognize in our own day, is our first main point. And it's every heart is made to worship, but only Jesus satisfies. Every heart is made to worship, but only Jesus truly satisfies. We see idolatry is universal. Like nobody is immune from idolatry. It doesn't matter if someone is uneducated or holds multiple degrees. The human heart is always looking for something to trust, for something to belong to, some sort of meaning of life. This is what Paul steps into. These sophisticated intellectuals, the high thinkers, and when he steps into this, you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't go, you know what, these people are too smart for me. I don't want to enter that conversation. They're going to make me look stupid if I try talking to them. Paul doesn't cower. He doesn't shy. He doesn't run away. He steps in. This is what happens. Again, he says he was deeply distressed. I want to hit that first. Depending on what version of the Bible you have, it might not say deeply distressed. Depending on your version, it might say he was provoked. That he was provoked in his spirit. This is a word in the Greek that means he was agitated or he was burning with anger so passionately that he was moved to action. Like he wasn't just annoyed or irritated, but he had to do something about it because what he felt was so deep with the idols that he saw in every direction. And the key here is Paul felt something. Like Paul didn't just have this sort of cold theology that was absent emotion. His theology produced emotion in him. And what it was for the people that he saw, he had anger and he grieved that what they were worshiping wasn't true. And here's the truth. You and I, we will never meaningfully engage our friends, our family, our culture if our hearts are not provoked like Paul's. Like if we don't have some sort of theology that produces an emotion in us that prompts us to action, when we see the brokenness around us, we will never meaningfully engage. If all we do is just shrug our shoulders at sin, just roll our eyes at culture, if we accept culture's definitions of true, what is normal, what is acceptable, what is right, we're sidelining ourselves and we will have no impact on the culture around us. And if I can be brutally honest for just a minute, some of you are okay with this. Like you've made peace living in a world where it's full of lies, it's full of idols, but you just deal with it because it's easier. Like you don't want to rock the boat, you don't want people to look at you sideways, you want to keep your head down, pay your bills, go to work, take care of your family, go to church on a Sunday maybe, and just survive rather than be used by God. There might have been times where some of you have seen somebody who's far from God, and you felt this stirring in your heart, but instead of praying, God, give me courage, let me go talk to that person, your prayer might have been, God, take this away or send somebody else. So you pawn your obedience and your faithfulness off on somebody else because you don't want to step out. You rationalize it, you excuse it, but you want to make it safe for yourself. And if your faith doesn't stir something in you, like if the brokenness of the world doesn't prompt you and move you to prayer, to action, then I can assure you that your faith will remain comfortably irrelevant. No impact. The people around you don't need another bystander. They don't need someone who just goes through the motions. So here's what you do. You deal with it. You deal with it. You stop pretending that someone else can do what God has put right in front of you. You stop praying for God to send someone else when He's given you an opportunity to step out. You stop hiding behind excuses, stop hiding behind comfort and fear and convenience. Like, you ask God to provoke your heart and to give you courage to do something about it. Because until that happens, like, the world will keep spinning away into darkness while your faith just stays safely tucked away. We've got to ask ourselves, am I provoked by the idols around me? Am I provoked by the darkness around me? Am I provoked by the destructive path of sin that people around me are living on? Like, do I grieve that people are chasing comfort and success and knowledge and money and status and pleasure and control, things that will never satisfy? Like, do I look at my neighbors, my coworkers, my friends, my classmates with this sorrow like you're missing it? There's something more for you. There's more joy. There's more life. There's something better. What you are chasing is not going to do it. Do you see it? Like, am I grieved by that? This is what moved Paul. Like, he didn't even know these people, but he had such compassion for them. This is what moved him. And just like today, not everyone responds well. Like, people aren't going to take kindly to that. Some were intrigued. Some were curious. But others were dismissive. Look at verse 18. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also debated with him. Some said, "What is this ignorant show-off trying to say?" Others replied, "He seems to be a preacher of foreign deities," because he was telling the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So we're going to pause and set the stage just a little bit more. So these weren't just random people walking the streets. These were some of the sharpest minds in Athens, the Epicureans and the Stoics. The Epicureans, they taught that the ultimate goal of life was seeking pleasure. Now not just like sexual pleasure and indulgence and stuff like that, but it was to avoid pain. Like, to have comfort, avoid pain at all costs, just pursue personal satisfaction. But they weren't interested in God. They weren't interested in eternity. They were simply just trying to carve out a comfortable, safe, secure little life for them and not be bothered to have to think about anything transcendent or spiritual. Like, does that sound familiar? And then you have the Stoics. The Stoics were another group of philosophers that Paul ran into here. Their philosophy was all about self-control, endurance, discipline, controlling one's emotions. That pain, suffering, and hardship, they were inevitable to the life experience. You just had to endure it without complaining. Like, just take it on. Now, here's why this is important. Because on the surface, Stoicism sounds admirable, right? Discipline, yes. Endurance, absolutely. Taking on self-control, for sure. But the problem is, what they were worshiping underneath all that was control, self-discipline, self-sufficiency. It was pride in their own strength. Like, they had no real hope outside of themselves, no compassion on others, no reliance on God. And this is very, very popular today. Like, we fast forward to today, and we can see that Stoicism is alive and well. If you're familiar with a guy named Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL, written some books, some podcasts, like, I've enjoyed his stuff on leadership, but it's all about discipline, strength, resiliency, focused on taking responsibility. There's a lot of good there, but the problem is, if those things become ultimate, like if those things become your hope, your God, your idol, your identity is built on toughness rather than on the grace of God, and you're still enslaved. Like, you're still stuck in a system that is not going to produce anything of eternal value. You're still worshiping something that's created other than the creator of heaven and earth. And this is what Paul steps into. And this is where it gets really good. Verse 22. Paul stood in the middle of the Areopagus, and he said, "People of Athens." I love that. Paul doesn't just go in quietly. He's like, I'm not going to bother anybody. I'm going to keep my head down. He sees this, and he goes right into the middle, and he says, "People of Athens, I got something to say to you. This is what he says. I see that you are extremely religious in every respect. We're going to stop right there for a second. This is a classic leadership technique. I don't know if you know about this. This is called the feedback sandwich, where I'm going to say something where I compliment you, then I'm going to wreck your world, then I'm going to encourage you. I remember the first time I ever got to preach on a Sunday morning at the church I worked at when I first got on church staff about 10 years ago. Preached that sermon, went into my pastor's office on Monday. He pulled me in. He's like, we're going to review your sermon from yesterday. I was like, okay, great. I was feeling great about this. Like, I am a gift, right? So he pulled me into his office, and he said, first, he said, you clearly studied the text, and you were passionate. I'm like, well, I did study, and I am passionate. You're welcome. And he said, but you preached for an hour, you spoke too fast, you paced too much, you said too many times, your application was off, your illustrations didn't quite make sense, and overall it just wasn't that good. But I have confidence you'll do better next time. Start with something good, wreck my world, finish with encouragement. That's what Paul does here. He doesn't just step in and start condemning them, but he starts by telling them that he sees something that they're doing. He says, I see where you are. I see you are worshipers. You're searching for something bigger. You're very religious and devout. That is good. But here comes the hook. Verse 23. For as I was passing through and observing the objects of your worship, I even found an altar which was inscribed to an unknown God. So these are incredibly religious and devout people. They're worshiping all their gods that they have names for. But just in case we're missing one, we're going to create an altar to the unknown God so that we can appease him too, even if we don't know his name. Therefore, this is what Paul says, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. So he's saying, that unknown God that you're worshiping, that's who I'm here to tell you about. You're worshiping, you're pursuing, but you're doing it all wrong. You're going after the wrong thing. This reveals a fundamental truth about every human being. We already said, we are all worshipers. We cannot escape it. Blaise Pascal, who's a 17th century philosopher, and he said there's a God-shaped hole in every human heart. That there's this hole that only God can fill, meaning that every human has this innate longing and desire for something infinite, something eternal. And nothing in this world can satisfy it, only God. I like the way Paul Tripp says it. Paul Tripp says, the theological nature of human life is utterly inescapable. You are always giving answers somehow, some way to the profound questions of life. Who am I? Why am I? What is life about? What is true? What is false? Is this all there is? You cannot be a rational human being without addressing these questions. So even in a city like Athens, a city full of philosophers debating the meaning of life and all these existential questions, the Stoics trying to master themselves, the Epicureans chasing comfort, they were all worshiping something. Deep down, every human heart knows there is more than this world. There is something more, something bigger, something better. We were made to worship. We were made to belong to someone, to find life in something eternal. So this is what Paul says. He says that this unknown God, that's the God that I came here to tell you about, the one that you don't know. You can't escape worship, but you're doing it wrong. You're chasing shadows. You're chasing dead idols. They can't do anything for you. Let me tell you about the God who saves you, the God who knows you, the God who loves you, the God who created you, the God who actually satisfies. And guess what? That is still the message for us today. Every person you meet, every neighbor, every coworker, every family member, every classmate, even yourself, will worship something. The question is, will it be the one who made heaven and earth, the one who gives you breath, the one who gives you life, or will it be comfort, status, control, pleasure, self-reliance, self-discipline? This is what Paul says. The God who made the world and everything in it, He is the Lord of heaven and earth, and he does not live in shrines made by hands. Paul says to them, everything you've been building, every statue you've made, every altar, every ritual, it doesn't hold God. It doesn't work. It can't contain him. Anything you create, it doesn't matter. He is the creator. He owns everything. He's not dependent on you. This is a slap in the face to their efforts, but to us as well. We may think like, well, of course, right? God, like, you can't just create something and worship it as a God. Really? Like, you don't think so? That the culture, like, think about the culture we live in today. People create their own temples all the time. They may not be bowing down and praying to a statue or to a building, but their lives revolve around their careers, their possessions, their Instagram accounts, their self-image, their personal philosophies, their intellect, their bank accounts, their kids' sports. Like, they act like God fits into their schedules, their rules, their rituals, their rhythms. But Paul says, no, God isn't contained by something you can create. He's not a project and he's not your hobby. Verse 25, neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything. Since he himself gives everyone life and breath and all things. Like, think about that for a moment. God doesn't need your effort. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your approval, your friends, your rituals. And you want to know something? That is a really good thing. If God needed your effort, your approval, your money, like your rituals, if he needed that, like, would you want to worship a God that was that weak? A God that needed something from you, yet he's the one who gives breath. He's the one who gives purpose. He's the one who gives everything, and he still wants to know you. Like, he still wants a relationship with you. He wants us to know him. That is grace. And then Paul pivots in verse 26 and 27. He says, from one man he has made every nationality to live over the whole earth and has determined their appointed times and the boundaries of where they live. He did this so that they might seek God and perhaps they might reach out and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. So these verses are telling us that God has arranged our lives, our circumstances in such a way that we would seek and we would find him. That even though he is sovereign over everything, that he's created the heavens and the earth, that he's got control over it all, that he sustains it all, he is still accessible to everyone. He is near, he's not far. Every person you meet, every skeptic, every coworker, every neighbor, they were made to seek him. And then verses 30 and 31, they give us this urgency. This is where the urgency hits. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God now commands all people everywhere to repent. Because he has set a day when he is going to judge the world in righteousness by the man he has appointed. He has provided proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. Here's our final point for today. God commands all people to repent because Jesus is Lord. Like, Paul is making a claim here that cannot be ignored. God is not indifferent and God is not neutral. He is Lord and he is just and he has appointed a day of judgment, but he's also provided a way out through Jesus. He's provided a way out from the wrath of the judgment that is coming at some point. Like, the resurrection of Jesus, it's not just an interesting historical event, but it is the hinge on which the entire gospel turns. Life, hope, rescue are all found in him. It says, deny him, and you will be lost, but believe it, and you will be free. This is why our faith cannot remain private. Like, you can't just say, I love Jesus, and that's enough. We see something completely opposite here. Paul in Athens says, your faith, this message, is for the world around you. It's for the marketplace, the workplace, school, neighborhoods. People all around us are worshiping. They're just not worshiping the God who made them. Like, your family, your friends, your coworkers, they are either seeking God or they're running from him. And if your heart isn't burning for them, like if your heart isn't provoked by the idols and the lies that culture just feeds us, then your faith isn't truly alive. So this means that we have to speak. We have to speak boldly. We have to speak compassionately. Like even when people roll their eyes, even when they dismiss us or mock us, it means we have to be the ones willing to say to them, there is more for you. Like there is more than what you are chasing. You were made for a life with God, and the comfort, the control, the status you're chasing, it will never satisfy you. So here's the hope of the gospel. Like God didn't leave us just stumbling around in the dark trying to figure out life on our own. But he made himself known in Jesus. Jesus lived the life that we couldn't live. He died the death that we deserve to die. And then he rose from the dead to prove once and for all that he is Lord of heaven and earth. This is the truth. The things that we chase, the comfort, success, approval, control, they ultimately can't satisfy us. We know this. Like, there are things that you have in life now that 10 years ago, you thought, if I could just have that, I'd be good. And now you have it, and you're like, now I want something else. Like, we've been stuck in this cycle, and we know it's true. We just have to confront it. Those things will always leave us empty. But Jesus, the one who gives life and breath, he's the one who will set everything right one day. He's the one who offers forgiveness and eternal life for all who trust him. So here's the invitation. Don't keep chasing. Let go of the idols that you know can't give you life. Stop carrying it all yourself. Trust the one who defeated death for you. Jesus tells us today is the day of salvation. Don't brush this off and just assume that you'll deal with it later. You were made for him. You have more joy in him, and it will be a joy in a life that never runs out. Let's pray.